Hey everyone, Sean here, and today in this episode I am back sooner than expected when it comes to The Last of Us, the HBO drama series that's been the new hotness, right? The new hotness of streaming series or just content on the internet. And of course, it has its controversies, but also its praises as well. We'll definitely get into that for episode 3, to be specific, for The Last of Us with Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey, you name it. So it's been quite the ride so far, and of course episode 3 really adds to that. Of course, I'm going to be talking about my likes and dislikes, and of course spoilers, but this time around, unfortunately, I do have to talk about spoilers early on to get the meat and potatoes, if you will, for this video, because I do want to talk about because of the things that took place in this episode. I do want to talk about what does that mean for the rest of the Last of Us series as a whole. That's the story for this series. So I want to get into that as soon as possible. So for those who haven't caught episode 3 already, go ahead and watch it, because it's such an episode to really check out within the Last of Us world. And there is quite a bit of deviation. Let me just say this much. There is quite a deviation from the video game story. So let's get right into it. I mean, episode 3 was objectively fantastic, I think. I mean, it's the episode about Bill, the lovable character from the video game Last of Us, being incarnated into here quite differently. I mean, the key notes of Bill are kind of there. He's kind of like the crazy government conspiracist who has bunkered himself, in his own city, and survived on his own for quite a while, and knows his ways around being a survivor of the apocalyptic world with the cordyceps. And he's a crazy, funny, loony guy in the video game, but that's changed quite a bit here for Bill in the drama series. For the most part, Bill's story has been transformed into sort of a romantic story with a male partner, Frank in this case, who happened to be also from the video game, but Frank wasn't quite the fully fledged character that we've experienced in the video games. Kind of like a tell but don't show really type of character for the most part. We do get to see Frank at some point when you get to a certain point in the Bill arc, let's just say. But here he is a fully fledged character, and we do see just Bill and Frank, right? They're pretty much like the two halves of the story, and it's all about them, having the love life, living out their lives in love and such like that in this type of setting. It's been quite the ride. I mean, it was a pretty interesting start with Bill, being Bill, right? Bunkered in, didn't want it to be taken by Fedra, so bunkered himself in his basement, has the security cameras, and then at some point he set up the electric fence. He has all sorts of traps, just like in the video game. I don't think it was as elaborate that we've seen in the video, game to here. For the most part, we've only seen like the flamethrower, the gun on the tree, and then and then the hole. So not quite elaborate like in the video games, I guess, but here, you get the idea of Bill, right? So he wants to keep everything out. He wants to be hunkered in. He just, pretty introverted for the most part. And of course, Frank came into his life by falling to the hole, one of his traps, right? And thankfully, it was just the hole. So that's how it kind of got started. I mean, and then out of his mercy, he let him up, took him in, fed him fantastic food, because he's a chef apparently in this one, with like rabbit or something to that sort, which is even a little more fancy than that, right? He even knew how to pair what kind of wine with the rabbit and stuff like that. So quite a different kind of Bill here in this case here. A little more sophisticated in that sense, but still crazy enough to be the kind of the Bill that we've seen in the video game. So I mean, it's quite different because in the video game, Frank kind of hated him, right? I honestly thought that this would end, right? This would end the way it kind of you expect from as someone who played the video game myself. And especially at the 3 year mark, he walked out of the house, felt like he's had enough, but he wanted to really like change up the place, spruce it up, for his own sake and probably for the sake of for Bill, right? To kind of bring balance to his world, so to say. I believe that's one of his quotes or something like that at some point. But he wanted to, sort of bring those things in Bill's life to kind of let him see, like, what's it really like. But yeah, so I really thought Bill and Frank were gonna end sooner, and then Frank would die at some point, and Bill will go back to sort of that same person-ish, at some point. But it didn't happen. They just went all the way. They went, balls deep, if you will, for this story. And yeah, so it's a tale about two men falling in love with each other at this point. They lived out the life pretty much for the most part a relatively good life in the post-apocalyptic world. And Bill got to like experience just love, right? After being so lonely for so long, Frank was kind of like that piece of the puzzle that he didn't know that, but he needed it, right? So, not to mention, right? I mean, with the changes that Frank wanted to bring for Bill, they got to meet different people as well, including, I guess, Joel and Tess, and at this point, you kind of know that they're a couple in this world, or at least in this incarnation, a full-fledged couple, even though they were pretty subtle about their sort of interactions with each other, right? But in this case here, they're a couple. So they met up with Frank and introduce them to Bill and have a trading route of sorts, right, with each other. And that's why they had the radio in the first place. So that was the whole deal, or spiel, if you will. And then, you kind of get to see the interaction with Bill and Joel, of course, and Joel kind of warning him about, the sort of possibilities, right, with the infected, but not only that, the raiders, right, or just people who want to take his town, because it's such a good place for a survival world, so, or survival type of world like this. So, because they got water, they got food, right, or just have a good hunting spot, just a nice place to stay. It's a full town for Bill and at that point Frank too. So having to take care of the place, but they also flourish from it too. I mean, objectively, if you were to speak from an objective standpoint, right, in a vacuum, or if you will, just self-contained, right, it's a good episode. It's a good story to tell. For the most part, it's not perfect, of course. There are some sort of plot holes, or just some weird notes to definitely talk about. And nonetheless, though, it still adds to the Last of Us world, because that's just kind of what it would be like, I guess, for one person's perspective in this type of world with fungi. That's actually how it's pronounced. I actually forgot about that at some point in my life in college. Anyway, fungi, in a fungi-filled world, this is the kind of story that could happen with somebody, at least. And so, yeah, so it was pretty sad to see. It was quite kind of like, damn, we already got to this point, sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, we got Bill, and that's the story essentially. So I guess this is where some of my negatives will come in. Like, yeah, Bill was pretty funny. He was pretty memorable in his own right in the video game for just being that comedic character. He had his back and forth with Ellie and such like that, and especially with the don't touch my stuff, and then Ellie just kind of like, okay, I mean, chill, man. I just want to check out your stuff. It's cool, that sort of thing, and gives him the middle finger and everything. So we really got to miss out on that, because it really deviates from away from that, and they wanted to make this a much more sort of a wholesome story instead of this, comedic thing in the world of this world of Last of Us. They wanted to make it, I guess, a little more serious, right? And but at least they did it pretty well for the most part. Though, like I said, it's not perfect because there were some things that were just like, what? The believability and such like that for a number of parts, including, let me get this big one out of the way, where when they were getting raided by, humans, right? They were called raiders. In this case here, they were setting off the flamethrower trap, and even though, it was raining, I guess it was hard to extinguish, right? Maybe it might have been like, I don't know, some gasoline type of thing where even the rain can't take it out or something. I don't know, maybe it's just a plot hole, or the rain just wasn't adequate enough to extinguish them flames when he was burning to his death, essentially. One of them, anyway. But then at some point, Bill was just out in the open, just shooting at the people, right? Instead of taking cover like you would in Last of Us. That was one of the key elements, right? But in any shootout, you definitely want to take cover and, do what you can to live, right? That's the whole thing about survival in this type of world. And yet Bill was kind of just standing out in the open, and then Frank kind of distracted him for a little bit, and he got shot in the stomach or something like that, or on the side or whatever, lower side. So that was like one of the weird things. And then, you got the whole thing about just the one or few, like very few, like zombies or just the infected walking into his trap, right? Didn't really get to show like what is it really like to survive in this world from the perspective of two men, right? Of these two men. It felt like this town was just like untouched for the most part, right? So you would think like if someone like Joel and Ellie, or just Joel, right, would walk into this town, he probably want to loot the town and make it his own too, at least for a long while. But this will have him really be objective, and I guess he wants to really look for his brother or something like that. So I guess there is that too. But because he got the truck, so I guess he doesn't care about the town. He just wants the truck and look for his brother, along with trying to escorting Ellie to her destination, right? So we didn't really get to see that at all, or very little of that. We didn't really get to see how they were surviving throughout their times, because they were together for a very, very long time. I guess it might have been like 13 years ish, at least. Pretty long time. At least it felt like, anyway. I have to take a look at that again. And back to Bill, like out in the open, just shooting and stuff like that. Like, why didn't they just have Bill like shooting from the window, and then him having getting shot, into the window and into his like shoulder or something? Like, that would have made sense and still have the same end result. It's just, I don't know, it just happened in a pretty rather stupid way possible in this type of world. So I don't know why, they thought, this will do, right? I mean, maybe he had that like sort of power rush moment or something. Like he felt invincible because his traps were working, and he just like felt on top of the world or something like that. I don't know. Like, it could have retrofitted something around that, but otherwise, just why not have him shoot from the window upstairs or something, and then get hit or something like that at some point. And then, somehow Frank, in that entire sequence when he was carrying him, didn't get shot himself. It's like, so it's just all the more weird of that whole combat sequence that we had with Frank and Bill. The one time we did have a scene where, yes, they're trying to survive in this world, right? But it's just kind of done in a rather subpar way, at least in my opinion anyway. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, it ultimately still doesn't really change the fact that it was objectively, a good episode, a good story to tell. But but the disappointing part is that we didn't get to see, the banter between Bill and Ellie, because that was like one of the funniest parts, some of the funniest parts within the Last of Us video game. But I guess they wanted to keep it serious to the point where they had a rather just kind of a bittersweet ending, right, with Bill and Frank, because Frank has some sort of like illness. It might have been cancer. We don't know. It doesn't really say. It just seems like it was cancer or some sort of terminal illness or something like that. Maybe he had it the entire time, but it just never like affected him until at this point when he's older. I don't know. None of us know. So it's rather sad, but actually Bill like joined in on ending their lives together, because, well, Bill kind of pretty much said it, that his purpose in life was to pretty much be with Frank, or Frank was his purpose essentially, and without that purpose, what's the point now at this point? So he joins in on the euthanization. He joins in on the euthanizing with his love of his life, Frank, and that's essentially that. That's how he, ends his life, just with his love, right? So yeah, especially with the pills, right? Even though they show him like mix it into the wine, it's implied that it was already in the bottle anyway. I'm not sure what was what, but I'm assuming that's what happened, right? And then I guess in theory he gave him a double dose or something. I don't know. It's pretty weird. Unless what he put in there was fake or something, and then he put the real thing already in the bottle. I don't know. I mean, who the hell knows what that whole sequence was? That's just a little strange. But nitpicking aside, I think in the vacuum, or just on its own, well told episode. It's a very engaging tale about two men in a fungi filled apocalyptic world, and that's that really. It does kind of like make me feel disappointed in a way though, because I felt like they should have done that with Tess. If they're gonna go super deep into like those sort of details with these characters, I felt like Tess deserves that too. Like, give her some context, give us that sort of context to feel all the more emotional for the end of Tess, right? She's supposed to be this like next partner of Joel in the post-apocalyptic world, but we didn't really barely get to see Tess in action at all, other than the museum stuff, and that's pretty much it. Like, we got to see a good amount of Tess in the video game, whooping some ass, which makes her, badass, dependable partner, right? That we believe stuck with Joel's side for so long or whatever. And so we feel that attachment, right? And we feel all the more of that loss when she is infected and gets taken out by the Fedra in the video game. But here, we don't really get to see too much of that. Or at all, really. So they did rather rush through Tess, and then Bill and Frank got this like big old fucking story in comparison. It was like an hour and 20 minutes, man. Like, for the most part, they got most of that time. I mean, in the beginning, short. Forgot to mention this, but they did have scenes with Joel and Ellie go through this house, or not house, but like a gas station. It's like a stash house for Joel to stash his weapon at some point, I guess, to save it or something, instead of trading it to another person for some sort of currency or something, goods, But that's another thing too that takes away the believability for this series so far. And then I'm like jumping around like stuff to stuff, but like, Joel putting the gun down into the stash, like, to save it instead of, training it. But then, not to mention, not on top of that, that's just one problem. The other problem was the whole thing with the guns at the end, right? There were so many guns, and Joel didn't take any of them to even trade, right? Like he could have just used those weapons to trade. Like I guess they just don't want to don't. I guess they don't want to like gloss over those details and or go through those details and try to stuff them into the story where yeah he had to make the trade or whatever. It probably did on purpose to help focus on Ellie and Joel, right? And then so that's why they skipped over the weapons to just avoid that scene or whatever. But I don't know. I mean, it is what it is, I guess. I mean, it's just I guess nitpicking at this point, but it does add to the some of the lack of believability in some noticeable areas, right? Especially for again in a survival world, or in a world you have to survive and stuff like that. So those are also some of the unbelievability that it came with. And then Joel was explaining his theory. I think it was his theory anyway. I don't think it's true or confirmed by any means that the infection happened because of the cordyceps. How they mutated, but because they mutated, they were able to like spread the spores across like abundant food ingredients and such like that, such as sugar and flour and such like that. Which recently I watched a video where that's pretty much debunked. That's impossible because fungi like to grow in rather humid areas, which is why this whole thing. I mean, could be or is likely going to be impossible, right? Because so many things about fungi that I know it's a video game world. It's a video game story, sure. I mean, it's all about fantasy and making things fun, but still, like, they could have chose a better origin story than that. But then again, it is Joel's theory, so I guess it makes sense coming from Joel because he's not a scientist or anything like that. So I think that's what it was. I don't think it was supposed to be like the cause, right? So I don't think that was supposed to be it, but some people are making it out to be that's what happened, right? But I think he said it was a theory. I wanna go with that. So for right now, maybe I have to rewatch that again, but I think that's what he said. But anyways, let's put that aside for right now. I wanted to at least put a rating on this episode here. I think it's a I would say an 8 out of 10, right? For the most part, it's a objectively a great story to tell, but we have to see how it all kind of like ages with the rest of the whole experience, because it's not just about one episode, right? It's it's a whole series, right? So yeah, I mean, while on its own it's a great story, this has to serve with all the other stuff to tell a story about The Last of Us, right? With Joel and Ellie. What does it mean for Joel and Ellie, right? In the end, because all that means is that Joel got a truck, So he got a truck. He got some supplies. There's not a whole lot to take away from for Joel and Ellie when it comes to Bill and Frank, other than the truck. So that of itself, yeah, it could be a detriment, it could be a negative, depending on how you see things. So that's why I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10, not quite the 9 out of 10, because we don't know how it's going to serve the rest of the episode as a whole. But in a vacuum or in a containment of itself, yes, it's a well-told story about the love story or whatever with Bill and Frank, right? Especially with Bill, being this lonely guy and all that stuff, blah blah blah. I wanted to also mention about the actors that were very very adequate in their roles. At least especially with let me bring up the name here so I don't botch it up this time around. Nick Offerman, yes. So Nick Offerman is from a lot of stuff, including Parks and Rec. He's the guy with the big mustache, right? You've seen a lot in the memes, including the computer toss in the trash can or big old dumpster or whatever. That's him. So great acting. He's definitely has some range, right? And Murray Bartlett played Frank. He also did great. I think I believe he's on the lesser side of things in comparison to Offerman, but they both did great as Bill and Frank in their respective roles. Murray is they did a really good job, making these characters just very much lifelike and believable, and just very engaging till the very end. It was pretty sad, right? But it was quite rampant, right? Because in terms of just like what happened. So I kind of wish to see more stuff like this for other characters too. Hopefully they come back around for Tess for a little bit. Not for a little bit, for for an episode for Tess, right, to give us more context. Maybe they'll pepper it throughout the whole other parts with Joel and Tess, right, to see, right, how things went. Even though Joel said don't mention about Tess ever, right, from this point on, because Bill left a letter and stuff like that, and Ellie was reading it. So it's funny of how he viewed Joel, right? He didn't really like him, but respected him at least. Maybe he was being just a jokester in the end. That's the Bill that we kind of know from the video game, and I kind of wish to see more of that, but I guess it is what it is. They wanted to make it a little more wholesome this time around. There's quite a deviation there. So what does that mean for the rest of The Last of Us, right? That deviation, right? There's such a deviation. I mean, the end result is still relatively the same, but how we get there was quite different. So what could that mean for the rest of the episodes, right? Yes, I mean, of course, Joel is still going to take Ellie to the hospital or whatever, but how they're going to get to the hospital, it could be quite different, right? Maybe he'll meet up with Tommy before then, or after that, he could meet up with Tommy then. I mean, we'll have to wait and see. But it's going to be very interesting potentially for more on part 2, right? Hopefully they can like really explain how Joel, meets his end essentially for in the video game, or at least from the video game, right? So how are they going to tell that tale better, right? I mean, there's so many more ways than what happened in the video game. It was such a dumb way for him to go out earlier too, and you didn't even get to barely play him in part 2. So that's why I want to talk about this also with the Bill and Frank episode, right? Episode 3, because it is an indication that there is potential for us to see a much better inclusion of how Joel meets kind of like meets his consequences, right? Because if you really think about it, Joel is kind of a bad guy, right? I mean, in this world, everyone's a fucking bad guy. And even the Fireflies, of course, Fedra, right? The infected, of course, that's a given, right? But it's all about how these factions kind of live, and they do some pretty shady shit to live, right? So basically, whenever Abby comes up, I mean, will she be, the big buff chick? But that's the least of her worries, right? How is she going to meet Joel? How they're gonna interact? How they're gonna, go about things, and how Joel, meets his consequence, right? So to say, is it going to be quite different? I mean, the end result is still going to be the same, right? Him kind of meeting his end, but how he's going to meet his end, that's going to be the big question here. Literally the $1 million question, right? If you think about that. So that's going to be a really interesting thing to keep thinking about until we get there, right? We cross that bridge. And it's just so damning that, we've already have season 2 announced, right? So they're really popping off on this Last of Us drama series, man. But hey, I don't blame them for it. It's been really successful. I think it's been well done so far for the first 3 episodes anyway. Even I think Druckmann said, or somebody said from the production crew, the deviation is going to take place if it's for the better, right? So if people like it, we'll keep sort of like deviating things from the video game to tell a different story within this world of Last of Us, right? So within this incarnation, so that is going to be quite the show, right? If it's going to be the same exact thing, I can guarantee you people are going to be very, very angry, especially with how this is turning out, right? Because, just like in the video game, you really love Joel, you love Ellie, you love the relationship between the two, and then all of a sudden, just like that, he just goes out like that. It's going to be history repeating itself, sort of, right? So, I mean, yeah, that's what happened in the story, but does that mean we have to see it again in a different format? I don't think so. I mean, we can definitely have that potential to deviate away from that and tell a much of a, or just a much well told matter, right? It's much more believable matter of how they're gonna end Joel's tale. So it's that is really what I'm hoping for. If they're going to deviate, hopefully they do it in such a believable manner and just a cool way. I think that could potentially be the game breaker for this drama series in a much rather good way. So we'll have to wait and see about that, and we'll have to just get through all the episodes. Hopefully we'll get more of this stuff with the side characters, I guess, and then but with Tess, hopefully they give Tess that treatment. Maybe in the end, I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see how this whole series plays out in season 1. So yeah, I mean, that's all I can say before I ramble on and stuff like that, about Last of Us. I mean, it's been a great hit so far as a drama series. I didn't really think it was going to turn out like this, actually. Like, I thought it's just going to be like, all right, cool, it's just a video game in a drama format, but it's been more than meets the eye, I would say. So I'm going to keep watching it. I'm going to keep looking forward to it. And hopefully you guys have been enjoying it too. Leave those comments in the comment section below. I would love to read what you guys think of the series so far. Do you guys think it'll deviate from the story? Do you guys want the story to be deviated like this? And do you think that Bill's change was something to your detriment or your negative or something like that? Any comments like that, I welcome in the comment section below. I like to see different opinions and such like that, if you do have a rather different opinion. So, because I know people have their hate or whatever it is about gay relationships and such like that, and blah blah blah. I mean, as long as it's a great story to tell, I'm all for it. So that's pretty much me. But yes, I felt disappointed that we didn't really get to see like too much of that. We didn't really get to see that funny Bill that we kind of look forward to, from the video game and stuff like that. So, it is what it is. But anyways, thank you for tuning in for this rather sooner than expected review or impromptu sort of video about Last of Us. I really wanted to talk about it because of what it brought to the table here. So, I think it has the really good potential to help tell at least part 2 a lot better, right? And better digest, hopefully in the future for us viewers. So, but we have to wait and see. It's gonna be quite a while, but we still have quite the eating to be had with the rest of season 1. So hopefully we'll get some more radical action with the fungi and all that stuff, and all the other side characters we have yet to see. So again, thank you very much. Hope to see you all in the next video. Sean out.